We covered a bunch of Phanteks Eclipse cases in the past, from very small to fairly big. Until now, I did not encounter a single one that made a bad impression. In fact, the P500A was so good that it became our dedicated case fan benchmark machine for the last 2 years. And now Phanteks updated exactly that one to keep up with the next generation. Meet the Phanteks Eclipse G500A DRGB, the next generation of I can handle anything. Now with less curves, more RGB and new fans. But before we cover the changes moving from a P to a G500A, let's look at the whole compatibility list. The G500A exists in 2 different colors, white and this black one. Similarly to many other Phanteks cases, there is a DRGB and a performance version. The DRGB that we got here comes with 3 140mm DRGB fans in the front and none in the back. The performance one seems to be stuffed with simple black fans, but I have no clue about the fans, so no comment about this one. And then there is a simple fan-less edition. Yeah, that's self-explanatory. Standing on the desk, the G500A stands 550mm tall, 485mm deep, and about 235mm wide on its thickest spot. The left side of the case consists of a 2.7mm thick tempered glass side panel attached magnetically and sealed all around. As far as component compatibility is concerned, we are looking at roughly the same list. For motherboards, it's everything from mini ITX all the way up to regular ATX and some eATX boards, but keep in mind that after 280mm width, you'll start hitting the cable hiding plate. For GPU, it's up to 435mm, so have fun in here, except for RTX 4000 cards. There we are restricted to 195mm depth. My Zotac 4090 fits, but it does create a little bit of a band on the octopus. Not too bad, I've seen worse, but I would suggest to bring one of those like 90 degrees or 180 degree adapters. Or just mount the GPU on one of the 3 vertical PCIe slots. Slightly squished to the front panel, but for a water-cooled build, this is rather perfect, though you need to bring your own Phanteks PCIe riser. For the cooling, we are going to have fun. The CPU cooler can be up to 190mm high, so even Nokia's NHD15 with its front fan elevated to make some space for the RAM will fit just fine. As said before, the G500A DRGB comes with 3 fans in the front. Phanteks always just writes something along the lines of 3 times 140mm DRGB fans included, but these are actually light versions of their M25 140s. They look like M25, but they are not quite them. There is no rubber on the corner, and these are spinning at up to 1400 RPM instead of the 1800. But still, M25s in general are very good fans, and given that these are only case intake fans, these are going to do the job just fine. No need to replace them. You might want to add at least one in the back, but you do not need to replace the front ones. All of them are pre-connected to this little fan controller, and you can provide them with some juice by connecting the SATA cable coming out in the bottom and the PWM cable meant for motherboard fan speed control. But speaking of juice, once the SATA cable is in, we will also start witnessing the RGB of this case, which is definitely more than before. We still got that nice looking line, that straight line traveling all across the PSU shroud, which nice. But we now also have some additional RGB in the top of the front panel, which is also a very clean, nice little line. And of course, the fans. A lot of fan RGB. If you want to control everything, you can either use the DRGB control button next to the I/O or connect the 3-pin ARGB cable to your motherboard and do whatever you want via software. In case you want to expand your RGB addiction, you can always add more Phanteks DRGB stuff to the loop with the leftover proprietary connector, or just expand it via the 3-pin. Your choice, and although it is partially proprietary, it's not technically excluding the norm, so Phanteks does get kind of a pass on this one. But still, why is not everybody just sticking to the norm? But as we are already on the subject of buttons, we got 3 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C, 2 USB 3.0 Type-A combined audio in and out, and the 2 DRGB buttons for mode and color on the top front of the case. Except for the power button, but we will get to this one later. When the case arrives, it comes in the usual Phanteks class packaging, a nice looking box, sturdy as expected, and the case is wrapped in 2 big styrofoam blocks and a bit of a protective cover. Inside we'll find the usual Phanteks accessory box containing 2 hard drive cages, a organized box full of screws, the Phanteks GPU anti-sag bracket, some zip ties, and the bracket needed for vertical GPU mounting. On the GPU bracket, instead of keeping the GPU in place by just lifting it up at the heaviest spot, this one is mounted from the back and helps to stabilize the PCIe bracket. I have no clue why, but this works. In the very first video, I prematurely thought that this wouldn't do anything, but I have Phanteks cases running in the office for years, and for some reason this works. It doesn't take away the sag completely, of course not, but it prevents it from happening for a very long time. Another thing that comes inside the box is the manual, and Phanteks in general is pretty amazing at writing manuals. Everything nicely explained, images, text, and just explanations that don't seem to be written by Google Translate, which nice job. A bit sad that they don't do these high quality booklets anymore, but I get that you don't want to print like $1 worth of manual every time you ship a case. Let's talk about drives. In the back of the case we got 3 2.5-inch brackets already pre-installed, all nice and easy. Then we got these cable covers that Phanteks builds into basically every case for half a decade. We can open them by simply unlocking them, and then we will also find the usual Phanteks level of cable management right behind it in form of a bunch of straps and everything nicely tidied up beforehand. On both of these cable covers we will also find a buttload of holes, and we can use these holes to mount a total of 6 SSDs to them. For the brackets from the accessories box, these can keep either a 2.5-inch or a 3.5-inch drive, and they are stackable, so yay. And to install them, we have a few possibilities. First would be the PSU compartment. There we got 2 positions, either at the very front or slightly behind. Though keep in mind, if you do this, you will limit the maximum PSU length by some amount. With nothing, you will have all the space in the world. With the front spot used, it's limited to 250, and with the back one used, it's 195, so beware what you're doing. The other position is by replacing the pre-installed cable hiding plates. These can be removed by unscrewing the thumb screw in the back and then pulled out while sliding them to the front. And then you can install an up to 2 stack per 2 brackets. Yeah, you need to remove 2 brackets to get a single stack in, which leaves quite a lot of space above and below the stack seeable, which I don't really like that. You could potentially install a single hard drive bracket and then remove just a single of these of those plates, but I really wouldn't do that, because you would secure from the back one whole hard drive with just 2 screws on like a 5-centimeter area, and the hard drive is pretty long, so I would just stick to the 2 stacks, 4 screws, like a block, and I wouldn't trust a single one. In case that you want to fill the case with drives, it's a total of 10 3.5-inch, 4 in the bottom and a stack of 6 in the front. And for SSDs it's actually kind of crazy, 19. Every 3.5-inch plus the 3 SSD brackets in the back plus 6 on the covers, so 19, okay. Coming to the fans, obviously the front supports 3 140mm spots, but in case you want to replace them with 140s, you can remove them all and then get to these brackets, and these can be repositioned to be used for up to 3 120mm spots. Not sure why you would do this, because the fans that are pre-installed are relatively good, plus 140 form factor uses the space available in the G500A relatively good. So I'm not even doing it for the B-rolls because of the cable mess that I would create, and I really want to avoid doing that. On a side note, if you leave the fans in and just unscrew the brackets, the whole thing acts like a kind of a swivelable door. Keep this in mind if you want to install a radiator behind them. This makes stuff a lot easier. And in case you go through all the trouble to replace the fans, I wouldn't mount the fans to the brackets outside of the case. You will just never get them into the position for the screws to attach to the case later on. Just first position the brackets, then install the screws. The other way around will be a nightmare. The top of the case features another few fan spots, 3 120s or 140s to be exact. And the mandatory spot in the back is, as Phanteks always does it, 120 or 140, your choice. But what about radiators? Yes, a lot, but not everything. The front is the only position that supports an up to 420mm radiator. For the top, it's either 360 or 280 only. And yes, I tried with my 420mm Alpha Cool one that I slap in every case, it doesn't work. And the back one is of course regular 120 or 140. For the thickness, the front can be up to 95mm before we start hitting the PSU shroud, and the top one can be about 70. But keep in mind that this is fans included in the top and with the front fans being installed outside of the case, so your mileage may vary, and the GPU of course. If the GPU is just insanely long, keep that in mind. Okay, I think we got all the regular stuff covered. Now let's take a closer look at how or what changed going from a P500A to a G500A. And we'll start with the one thing that I just don't like, the start button. I understand repositioning it, I just don't really care, but this thing has like only one anchor point in the center, and that makes the whole thing just wobbly as hell. It just doesn't feel good. On the P500A, it felt much better. I just don't like that, but I like pretty much everything else they did. The front panel now features slightly bigger holes, meaning more air passing through with less restriction. And the mesh part of the front panel is starting much lower than it did before, which is great. Plus, and that's really not important, but the bump on the front panel now points outwards instead of inwards, which is just a small design choice, but it's nice to mention. But the biggest improvement happened in the top. Instead of the way overdue magnetic dust filter, which just looked awful on many cases, or on any case, we now have a full-on metal cover with the same hole size as in the front. It's very easy to remove, just click it out in the back and then pull. And doing things in this way instead of the old way has so many advantages. Like, it makes installation a lot easier because you can now hold on to stuff like from the top through the panel, because it's just a hole now instead of a honeycomb filter. And therefore it then also prevents double air filtration. Previously you had big holes in the metal followed by small holes in the filter, which in the end is just double filtration. It's terrible for non-static pressure fans, and it just doesn't make any sense. It was okay because the holes were so big. If they were smaller, would be an issue, but this is just so much better and so much easier to use. And what's also amazing about this one is that they are not going to be glued to the fan. So the fan has a little air pocket in between the filter and the fan, which then also improves performance, or on many fans that can drastically improve performance. And also excessive noise. There are fans that create extremely annoying noise, extremely annoying sounds when they are pushed against a filter. And this is just so much better than previously. Other than the big improvement, we also got a few small ones that I noticed. Like, for example, the removal process of the cable covers. Previously, there was just a millimeter small spot at which you could slide them out, and because Phanteks pre-installed the front fans, removing a cover would kind of require you to either remove the fans first, or you needed to use so much force while pushing it to the front that you may or may not cut a cable or two. So now you have a much bigger area at which that cover pops out. It is so much easier to remove. I was able to do it during B-roll without fan removal, which was impossible for the P500A. Another small but impactful change is the complete removal of side panel screws. Now both sides, the left and right, are kept in with strong magnets and swivelable, and then removable once you open them far enough. Very, very convenient. Overall, going from a P500 to a G500 is just an improvement overall, and some things are smaller, but it's definitely an improvement. But Phanteks also kept the things that were working fine before, like the cable management in the back, the vast amount of space above the motherboard, the nicely distributed holes to get the cables to the front, including the hiding plates. And now we got a single connector for the start button, which is kind of stupid because it's just like 2 pins, but it is genius at the same time because there is just one way of connecting it, so you cannot mess this up. And for first-time builders, this is gold. Quality-wise, the feel is a tick better. It's not a big improvement in material or build quality, but everything feels slightly sturdier. Though this could also be because I'm comparing it to a few years old P500A that has seen some horrible stuff. So maybe that's just, you know, old and used versus the brand new right next to it, but it feels slightly better. Design-wise, it's different. While the P500A had more curves and round corners, the G500A is much more geometrical, more straight lines, angles. It's different. You may like it or not, it's really a choice, but I can say that the implementation is well executed. For its performance or cooling performance, we will talk a bit more about it in the build video of the build that you can see right here, but I can say that it handles, well, the case handles everything. The build was actually quite of an experiment because we slapped in a 13700K and a Kotetsu, and the thing is, the Kotetsu doesn't really survive 260 watts worth of load. It didn't thermal throttle because the motherboard allowed 150 degrees C before thermal throttling, so the whole thing was a stupid idea, but I can say that I did it outside of the case and inside of the case, and given how many M25 fans we had the exact same temperature here on the desk and here inside the case, so the case works fine, really, really fine. The only thing I did notice is that the top fans are not blowing as much air out as the back one. Hard to measure, obviously, but if you put your hands on it and all of them are spinning at the same speed, you can feel that there is quite a lot more restriction in the top than there is in the back. But as long as you have worthy fans, this case won't be the issue, or the cooling performance will not be the issue. If it's better than a P500A performance-wise, it's just good luck measuring that. The front and top are probably less air restrictive than before, but making a number out of it, it's going to be like a point something, and that's really hard to measure. I can just say that both cases perform exceptionally well compared to what's out there on the market. But what about building inside of the case? It's essentially the same thing as inside the P500A. The cable management makes everything easy, the case is nice and sturdy, nothing really bends. The fan installation was quite easy, you have a lot of space to get the cables to the front. It's easy. It's exactly like the P500A, I would say. The only thing I noticed is top fan installation is so freaking easy in here. That was a 2 seconds job. But other than that, nothing to nag. So for who is it? Everybody. Small build, big build, insane build, it can handle it. Except for people doing dual builds. Because yes, I almost missed it, because I've never done one before, but this is the first ATX size Phanteks case that doesn't come with dual system support. If that was something that you wanted to do, then this ain't for you and you kinda need to go back to the P500A. But okay, this should be all for Phanteks and their G500A. At this point, a huge thank you to Phanteks for sending it over. On a side note, we also have a Discord server, so if you wanna join, the link is down below. And of course, we still have channel membership, so if you're looking for a good way to sell your soul for an OG poop emoji, that's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but it will also serve to buy a tiny house for my stack of Phanteks hard drive brackets. It's getting out of hand. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on the Lee & Lee Uni P28 fans. They come with 0 RGB but a lot of performance. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.